Hi, I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic. I feel honored to be here, to be around such great people as the people of AA. Sabrina's right. I watched her come into the program in Ferndale, and I started going to that meeting in 1977 when I moved here from Los Angeles. Anyway, Sabrina came to a few meetings, and then one Saturday morning I got up, went in to wake up my son, and there she was in bed with him. But I only say this because she gave me permission, you see. I wouldn't have done it, and I asked her about that earlier today, that could I have permission, because I didn't want to break her anonymity of bedroom conflicts, you know. So anyway, it's been wonderful. I knew her mother and all that in Fortuna, and it's been a great life. I don't know where to go. I'm going to start, that whole thing of what happened, what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like now. But there's some dates that I have to remember. Just recently, August 25th, I turned 76. 70 years ago, at 6, I was drug off to an AA meeting 70 years ago. I've been associated with this program all those years. And I talk about resentments. Man, did I have a resentment against AA. As a little kid, growing up in Southern California, my mother, God bless her, found AA. She was a raging alcoholic, and 1944, September, this month, she went to AA and got sober. Now, I was living in a little town called Sierra Madre. I was living with my grandparents. My mother was off drinking a lot, and she met a cartoonist in town at the local bar where she hung out every day. And he was a cartoonist. He was doing Woody Woodpecker animation, and later did Bugs Bunny and Porky Pig and Snow White and Seven Dwarfs comic books. And they decided to move to Hollywood because it was during the war, and he needed transportation, and it was too far to go from Sierra Madre clear to Hollywood to work. So they moved into Hollywood, and I stayed with my grandparents. And every day, he would get up to go to work, and she would go down Hollywood Boulevard to the first bar, and the bar, and the bar, and the bar all day. He'd come home and have to go down Hollywood Boulevard from bar to bar to bar to find her. And this went on for a little while, and he was talking to a friend of his in the studios and said, I got this lady I'm living with, and it's just driving me crazy because every time I get home, I got to go find her in the bars and take her home. And she also liked to argue a lot. She had this way of arguing that was amazing. I remember later, I watched her one day start after my stepfather. He had a studio in the house in Dana Point. That was down near Laguna, and I was in high school there in Laguna Beach. And he would start in on her. She would start in on him. That's what happens when you get old. You get things twisted. But she would start in on him, and what a son of a gun he was, what a bastard, what this, he did this, he did this. And here he is drawing his comic strip. And at noon, he sets a pen down and gets up and makes a lunch, and she's still going on around. It's like a continuous loop. She just keeps running it until she got tired of one subject, and then she picked up another, and then she'd go back to the first one. And she did it all day long until 5 o'clock when he quit his work, went in, made a whole dinner, set the table. And he went over to her and picked her up out of a chair, just with her shoulders, and then sat her down, and she says, "Oh, it's dinner time." Like all of a sudden, she's back normal again. And that's what I grew up with as an alcoholic son, alcoholic. And so I started going to these meetings. Well, my mother was addicted personality, as we all are in this program. So she went to her first meeting on Hollywood Boulevard at the old Masonic Lodge, because this person that my father went to talk to at the studios had been sober for a while. He kept a bottle of whiskey in his drawer, so he always had something in case he needed it, and every 30 minutes he would call his sponsor, just to keep sober for 30 minutes at a time. And so he went and talked to my mother and said, hey, there's something new down at the Masonic Lodge, and would you like to go? And she said, sure. So she was into a lot of things. She liked things, to learn things. And so she went to the meeting, and there was a guy there talking about sponsorship. And afterwards, she went up to him and said, well, you'll be my sponsor. He says, hell no. I don't sponsor women. I sponsor men. You have to go find your other woman to be your sponsor. I said, okay. Grabs my stepfather and says, well, let's go have a drink. They went off, and she had some more booze. About 2 weeks later, she finally, something clicked. It's amazing how this program digs in, and it captures somebody, and it might not be instantly. It maybe has to go through a few days or a few weeks or something, but it leaves a piece of poison, or whatever you want to call it, into the system. So anyway, so she said, I'd like to go back. Well, she got addicted to alcoholics. She changed it from alcohol to alcoholics. I lost her to alcoholism. I lost her to alcoholics. In 1945, we moved to San Gabriel, and she started the 2040 group in San Gabriel on Las Tunas Boulevard. I was drug off to these meetings every week. We had all the Coke bottles at our house that we gave out. People wanted to drink. We had a bakery that gave us day-old cakes. And she started probably one of the first recovery homes or dry-out centers in Southern California. We lived in an old board and batten house with a bunch of bedrooms in it. It used to be a layover station for the train across the street from the depot there, that they come and spend the night and then catch a train and go farther. And sometimes we have 8 or 9, 10 alcoholics in our house in all stages of recovery, from having intravenous feedings to learning to give them. I learned how to give Carol sugar and milk, Carol syrup and milk to somebody that was dehydrated and weighed 80 pounds. They didn't have dry out clinics. They didn't have the things that they had today. So she did it. They went to meetings all over the place, and at that time they were very spread out. They would walk for miles to get somewhere, buses and trolleys. She and my stepfather went down to San Diego on the train to help start a new meeting in an area of San Diego. She was really active in the program. But what it did for me, it was another place of abandonment. I couldn't bring kids home. I didn't know how to make kids because I'd been moving around and shuffled around a lot. My real father left when I was 5. He had some mental issues, and he was burying food up in the Hollywood Hills, and ended up walking all the way to Little Rock, Arkansas. Got beat up by troopers in Texas and left huge scars on his legs with billy clubs because he was a mentally person with mental diseases and pain. Ended up in the Little Rock State Hospital and went through shock treatment. And later, as he recovered, there was a crazy nurse in there that married him. She was one of my stepmother. And she was nuttier than hell. I guess working around that field, you get a little nutty, but boy, she did with him. And he became a mental technician in the state hospital there, and ended up being the supervisor of the criminally insane ward and the alcoholic ward. And he worked with a bunch of AA people. He had the programs there. Later, he became a counselor for the federal rehab program. He was appointed 3 terms by FABUS to the mental health program of Arkansas. And I went back there. He never called me. And one time we heard from him, and he came out to California to see my sister and I. And I was in the 7th grade or something like that. Well, I hadn't seen him in all those years since I was 5. And between my father, stepfather, my mother, and my father, he was there for a couple of weeks visiting. And then he went back to Arkansas. And they thought it was a good idea to send me back to live with him. So I think about 12 or 13, they put me on a Greyhound bus all by myself and sent me to Little Rock, to a strange area, to a man I really didn't know, and a stepmother I hadn't met yet. Well, I spent a whole summer. I went there for a month and lived with him in Little Rock. Then he came back out here to visit my sister, and we flew back that summer. And then, as school was just starting, they quickly bundled me up, put me on a train, and sent me back to Arkansas. And in the meantime, he'd moved out of downtown Little Rock to a rural area, and we had a little dirt road, and we went to a school that was first to the 12th grade, and it was somewhat of a nightmare because my grandmother my stepmother was so crazy. I'd be sitting on a couch, and she would the phone would ring, and I knew it was the kid down the street calling me. And before I could get it, she was in the kitchen. She was at me, grabbing my wrist to get the phone away, and leaving blood coming out of her from her fingernails. She was really nutty. Anyway, I lasted a year there. I went to school for a year. My confusion in my life, my birth certificate says Michael Wallace Dharma, D-A-R-M-A. Well, my grandmother on my father's side was born in Holland, and my grandfather was born in Holland, and my father came to this country with his mother, and she changed the name from Friedenberg to Dharma, D-A-R-M-A, because she was a metaphysical person and took the word Sanskrit and put it in there, which is another name in the Buddhist and other areas of Dharma. Well, it was D-A-R-M-A, and I've always been fascinated with Buddhism and other Oriental religions, but so the first time I got there, and I'd taken on my stepfather's name, which is Armstrong, and so here I am. They called Michael Dharma, and I'm looking around, so who the hell's that? Oh, it was me. So I was changing personalities, and I learned how to do that early. So I came back, and we started moving around a lot. I went to 10 different schools and quit school in the 10th grade. One of the schools was up in Big Bear, a little town called Fawnskin. The winter population was 75. There was only 2 kids in the school. And that was the year that I found my first girlfriend. And here I am, the end of school year, starting a summer, and I'm living with some other family because they're moving me back down to the city the day as school ends. And I'm sitting on the bus, looking out the bus window, and there was my girlfriend down there, and I could hear her say to her friend, "Look, he's crying." That was the last time I cried until I buried a dog with my son when he was 18. I didn't know how to deal with my feelings. I felt so abandoned, so lonely, and dealing in a house of alcoholics that were going on 24 hours a day. They would go to meetings and they'd be up till midnight, 1 o'clock talking A. All they did is talk about A and their recoveries. I had the first time it happened, I was asleep in my bedroom and there was an extra bed in there and there was a drunk sleeping in the bed, and he went into DTs at 1 in the morning. I was never told what DTs were or what could happen, and all of a sudden I've got this person screaming and jumping on the bed into the corner because the bugs were coming all over him and I couldn't see any bugs. And it was another thing that happened to me like that in dealing with the different alcoholics some near death, different experiences. So I started shutting down. Then I realized that I had a problem with dyslexism. I'm dyslexic. Also, I'm left-handed, which only limits us to 15% of the population. So I had to put everything backwards when I did things, because they don't make things for left-handed people. So here I am, living this life of loneliness inside, because at that time with my mother and all those alcoholics, I would get up in the morning, I'm 7 years old, I'd get on my bicycle, fix my own breakfast, and be gone all day, riding around, doing whatever I could find to do, and get back when it was dark, and nobody ever asked me where I'd been, or what happened to me, or what was the day like. It was all about the alcoholics. But one thing that the alcoholics did for me, I started going to those meetings because they didn't have a babysitter. And I started doing service work because it was the only way that I could get attention. I was accepted. I would hold a cup of coffee for a drunk that was shaking so bad the coffee was jumping out of the cup. That was when they had cups and saucers. And I would spoon feed him his coffee. I would put out chairs. I would put out ashtrays. I would clean up. And part of the way through the meeting, listening to these different stories, I would fall asleep on a couple of chairs I would lay on, and then I'd get up and I'll put all the chairs away. And it was where I felt accepted. It wasn't the exception for being accepted from my mother or stepfather or my sister who was 7 years older. It was those drunks in AA, the people who are going through their different stages of recovery. They never said any bad things to me. They never yelled at me. They always patted me on the head. They thanked me and they appreciated me. So what the resentment was is that I never had a drink that was comfortable. I learned so much through osmosis in this program of hearing the stories, just like the teenagers that were here today, the stories. I could relate to those stories. I could relate to that loneliness and feeling not wanted, feeling not accepted. I also learned how to be an absentee owner in the body. I fantasized all day long. In school, because I couldn't pass tests, because I couldn't change it from what I read into a piece of paper, I got punished for it. And I started, living those dreams because it was the only safe place I could be. I would be sitting there dreaming and looking out the window, and the teacher would say, "Michael, did you?" I wouldn't know what they said. I wasn't there. That absentee owner of a body is the only place I felt safe. It got so strong that I could drive from LA to San Diego and not remember driving there, just in a fantasy. My kids had to learn, my two children, a son who's 50, almost 50, and a daughter who's 45, used to come in to me and say, "Dad, can we go?" And I'd disappear on them. I would just disappear. And they'd go, "Dad, come back. Hey, Dad, come back. We're asking, we're talking to you." "Oh, okay, what do you want?" And I'd disappear again. So they would write notes and do whatever they wanted to do, and they'd just tell me, "Well, we told you, Dad. Didn't you hear us?" Hell, I said, "Oh, I guess I didn't," because I didn't hear them. But when going through all those schools, I quit school in the 10th grade. One of the schools they did for me was, we're living in San Gabriel, and I'd had about 4 years now. I'm from 7 to about 11. I was in the 4th grade, and they decided it was not safe for me to be in this house. I had one of the one of the alcoholics, I was molested. Other things happened, and they thought, well, this is too much with these stories about death and dying and all this craziness going on. My mother also loved the Ouija board, and she'd call me in from playing and be on a Ouija board for it at 7 years old and all that stuff. And so they put me in a Catholic boys boarding school for 2 years. Now, I had heard all about God in AA, the spiritualness of the program. I witnessed it. It was absorbed. I absorbed all that stuff. I didn't really investigate it or read the book or anything, but I just took on all that stuff. And I watched how many people got sober and started loving themselves, started smiling, started being happy. This is a phenomenal program. This is the main my spiritual life. And then I went to the Catholics. And every morning we had to get up and go to Mass, every night benediction. And there was one part of the year where for a whole week, and these kids were from the 4th grade to the 8th grade, I think, in their school. There's 150 of us. We had to do a silent retreat. And we could go out and play marbles and do things, but we couldn't talk to each other for a whole week. I mean, talk about unusual and punishment. To have to be silent for a week when you're in the 4th grade and the 5th grade. And I got abused by the priest because of my dyslexism. I couldn't pass the catechism tests, and I got beaten for it. And I got all these other things. I remember one time they were having a big trip to San Pedro to go out on the boats with the Knights of Columbus, had a bunch of fishermen down there, and we're going to go out on the fishing boats. But they called me aside, the Monsignor and a couple other kids who had gotten in some trouble, and I didn't know what they got into. And he put us in his office while he was working on papers, and he made us stand there up against the wall for 7 hours. I never knew what I did to cause him to do that and stand for 7 hours when you're in the 4th grade is painful. It was like, why am I being punished? What is wrong with me? So I started living how I was, how bad I was, and how unfulfilled. The other time there was Sundays is when all the kids got their parents to come and visit. It was Sunday visiting time. And they had big picnic benches and beautiful layout there for the parents to come. And we were all in a big study hall. And we're all waiting, and there would be a runner that would come up and get Joe, and then Pete, and then Bill. And pretty soon the room got bigger and bigger with less people in it. And pretty soon I was the only one left. I was all by myself in this big study hall. And then I had to go down and walk by the big football fields and soccer fields back and forth for 4 to 5 hours because I could never go to another family to be part of something because my parents didn't show up to see me. Maybe once a month they would come by and see me. And my father, being a painter, he would put out his easel and start painting pictures because he couldn't be anywhere where he wasn't doing his creative work, painting and drawing. And I would talk to my mother for a while, and she would tell me all about her AA stuff. And then they were there for an hour and a half, and they'd be gone, and I wouldn't see them for another month or so. My sister came once in a while, but she was already pregnant. Well, she had her children, or she had her first child at 16, so she was off in her own world too. So I left home at 16 with $50 in my pocket, hitchhiking, looking for work. I ended up shoeing horses, my room and board, up in Idlewild, 65 head of horses. And my cousin worked on a ranch nearby. He was a year younger. And every chance we get somewhere, we would get drunk. Sit in a corral with a bunch of horses and sit there in the middle. I don't know why we picked the middle of the corral with 65 head of horses, and we get drunk on tequila. See, I didn't like to drink, but I was trying to prove something. I was trying to prove that I could do it better. I could do it differently. So my parents had signed for me to go in the Navy. They'd already moved to Mexico, Cuernavaca. And I went down and spent a month with them over New Year's. And in February 1956, I flew back to San Diego and took a bus to downtown Los Angeles, and I went in the Navy. They'd already signed for me when I was 16. Here I was 17. The school in Laguna Beach, the high school, had already told me to leave school at 16 because I wasn't doing anything, wasn't passing any tests. Everything, grades were 0. And so I did. I left. I went in the Navy, and that was my drinking career. 4 years in the Navy. I drank everything from aftershave lotion. I could pour it through bread, squeeze it, and drink it. I learned how to make Applejack and all the other stuff. And straight grain alcohol. I would drive from Laguna to San Diego in blackouts time after time. I never got caught, but I sure had a hell of a time finding the car. When I got to San Diego by the naval station, there were miles and miles of parking lots, and I didn't know where I parked my car. I started blacking out, and it wasn't long before that rage and anger started coming out when I started drinking. I would go out in Japan and other places we traveled to, and with the guys I worked with in the boiler room, and we'd go out, start drinking, and pretty soon I was all alone, and I'd black out, get in a fight with somebody, end up back on ship, bloody and beat up. And I would ask them, well, what happened to you guys? Oh, you just wanted to fight with us, and we got tired of it, and we left. You know, here I am fighting with guys that I'm living with because I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm under the control of this disease of alcoholism. But see, that early things in AA made it painful for me. It made it ever so painful, because what a little knowledge can do of this program can spoil something that you're really trying to accomplish, which was kill myself through alcoholism. And we look at the spiritual things that I knew that I was doing, which was killing my soul and killing my body and my mind. And I got out of the Navy in 1959 in August 25th. That was my birthday. I was 21 years old. I drank in Laguna Beach. I was staying with my parents' house, and I'd come home drunk, and my mother would just look at me and smile. She was very active in AA. And I'd get angry at her and call her nice names and things like that. Because, see, I knew what I was doing wasn't what I should have been doing. And she knew it, but she knew there was nothing she could do for me. All she did was smile. Well, that lady taught me a great deal. In December of that year, my grandfather died, who was somebody I loved dearly. And we were burying him on the 24th of December. The 23rd, I drank all night, and I was in a complete basket case, sitting in the limousine, going to the cemetery to bury him. I wanted to be in that casket. I wanted to be done with the pain and all the stuff in me. And I couldn't do it anymore. And I heard my grandfather say to me, Michael, you don't have to do this. You know what to do. Oh, damn AA, man. They were right in the middle of the funeral. I knew what I had to do. And then I started thinking about all those people that I'd heard in all those meetings as a little kid, sharing their wounds, sharing their pain, sharing their smiles, sharing their hearts with this little kid that all he wanted to do was be loved. All he wanted to do was be accepted by somebody. And I worked my ass off trying to meet that and got patted on the back for it and all that. I wanted to be done. And on the 24th of December, I took all that stuff and went into the San Marino South Pass AA meeting and said, I'm an alcoholic. I felt at home. It was the first time I felt at home in my life. Because there they were with smiles, with love. And even before that, in my early days of high school in Laguna, just down the street from the football field was a wonderful friend of my mother's called Chuck Chamberlain. And my stepfather took off and went to Mexico with my mother's best girlfriend, and I was left with this raging lady, and angry and screaming, and she was sober, but she was angry and raging, and I didn't know what to do. And so I would, after school, walk down to Chuck's house. And when he was home, he'd invite me in, sit with me, and listen, and start teaching. He taught me so many things that took years to understand. He taught me about one thing. He said, you know, Mike, we are the only species on the planet that has choices. My cat can't fly like an eagle. My dog can't climb a tree like a monkey. They're just stuck in who they are. And we're the only ones who want to be something than what we are. But the only thing we can change, and we can't change who we're born with, we're stuck with that for the millennium. All those wounds and all those things are there. They're never going to go away. But the more times we practice, the softer they will become. And there was many things he'd shared with me, and a lot of them I forgot until many years later. But he was there for me. Another person in AA reaching out to a kid that didn't even have a drinking problem then. He had a living problem. I was 16 years old. And over the years, I've heard him speak many times, and I remember all those conversations, the willingness to have somebody take their time. And later, my mother, after 27 years on the program, quit practicing, quit going to meetings, quit doing service work. And at 65, got drunk, got a drunk driving ticket, and never got sober again. At 65, she started drinking, and I never had a close relationship with her because of all the stuff that was going on. I didn't see her for many years. She lived in Laguna, and I lived up in Fortuna. And the last 2 years of her life, I brought her up to the thing, talk about having to do service work. I brought her up, and she lived in a mobile I had on the property there. And she was hiding her bottles. And I'd clean up for them. And all I could do for them was the same thing she did with me. I could smile and accept her just the way she was. And my daughter would ask me, well, how's Grandma today? And I'd say, well, she's up there, Roger and bobbing it. She had been married 4 times, 2 prevalent ones. One was Roger, my stepfather, and one was Bob later. And she would start in on Roger. He'd been long gone out of the relationship for 30 years. And she's running him, and she'd run him for 20 or 30 minutes, and then she'd switch to Bob, who was dead, and left her $50,000 or $60,000, and she's still bitching about him. And then she'd go back to Roger, and then she'd go back to Bob. Well, she was tough. She was really tough. Later, in the last few years, I realized that she was bipolar. My sister had mental problems, and she committed suicide in 1978 by jumping off a cliff in Dana Point. She had 7 kids, and every one of those kids have issues, and they're on some kind of drug for it, depressions and all that stuff. I don't know how I escaped from that genes or whatever it was. So my mother died, my daughter and I were there, and we had her cremated. And the things that we can do as AA people are amazing. I hear these amazing stories about how people change their life and accept things completely different and stuff. Well, I had her up at the cemetery, or up at the mortuary in her box, and they called me to pick her up, and I said, well, I don't think so. And they said, what do you mean you don't think so? Oh, no, man, she got to cool down. I mean, that was a tough lady. And I'm going to leave her there for a while, and she can talk to those other people come and going. And because, see, when she got drunk, she was in Scientology, so she had afterlives and all this stuff. So I gave her some people to talk to. So about 6 months later, they called me and asked me to come and get her. I said, hell, she ain't cool enough. I mean, she needs some more time. So finally, about 2 years I left her there. And they oh, we're going to sue you or something to come and get her. I said, well, maybe she's had enough time to cool down. Maybe she'll listen now. I went up there and I got her, and I had a Toyota Supra. And she was only 5 foot tall. And we took off, and I came down from Eureka to Fortuna doing 140 miles an hour. Just for her. I had the windscreen thing open, and we're zipping down the freeway. You like this, Mom? And she nodded, you know. And I took her home, and I put a cup of tea out there for her. And I said, okay, Mom, what are we going to do now? Here you are. You're not in the same place. The past is not available to us anymore, but the future is. I says, how can we change this relationship? And I invited her to be, well, first of all, I said, would you like to be in a Boda bag with one eye looking out, and I can hang you by my office door and you can watch people come and go? I said, no, I didn't think you did that, you know. And I had some fun with it because, see, I knew the changes that I need to make within me of forgiveness and love and acceptance of another human being. And I invited her to be my guide because if you can't beat them, you got to join them. I just had to set the scenario properly, but it was a thing that I could learn from, and the fact that it's in me, not out there. You know, when I lose somebody, I didn't lose anybody, they just change forms. My partner of 20 years was at our house in Fortuna years ago, and I had this beautiful bowl, big salad bowl that a great ceramist made for me years ago. And I loved that bowl. It was beautiful. And we just had some friends over for dinner, and they left, and she's standing there wiping the bowl, and it slipped, and it on the floor. And she looked at me, and the eyes got bigger and bigger, and what am I going to do, and all that stuff, because she had, I don't mind speaking this, but she had a lot of relationships, and a lot of them weren't very good. And the reaction of what, you know, people can do under situations like that, and I just looked at her, I looked at the bowl, and said, God, look at it. It just changed forms. She looks at me, didn't know what the hell I meant. I swept it up and put it in the trash. You see, this program has given me a way of seeing things that I don't have anymore. I can still see the bowl. I never lost the bowl. Just in my perception of losing. I didn't lose anything. So about 6 months later, she dropped a cup. And I thought, oh, look at that, it changed form. Swept it up, and then she started laughing. It took her that long to trust me. Another gift that I got, now I've been married 3 times, living different girlfriends. And she comes, and I've taken all those women. None of them ever see me drink. There's nobody left alive that's ever seen me take a drink. But I'm still an alcoholic. And here I am. She tells me that she's having a problem with somebody in a group of people, and it's just an edgy form, she's not feeling good. And one of them is a wonderful lady, and it's an Al-Anon. And I mentioned to her, now, all those other women in my life, my first wife for 24 years, were great at telling me, I think you need a meeting tonight. Of course, they never went. They would go with me to a meeting, but they'd sit and listen and all that. So I said to her, why don't you go call so-and-so and talk to her about it. She's in Al-Anon, then I dropped it. Well, last year my wife joined Al-Anon. And it's the first time I could say to a woman, I think you need a meeting tonight. God, what a gift. You see, you got to wait for things in this program. See, what I've learned on this journey, that whatever I want in life, I have to be to that degree. If I want love, I got to be loving. If I want a wonderful relationship with my wife, I can't be nasty to her verbally at the dinner table and expect her to be loving 3 hours early. I got to wait a month for her to heal. I learned that I don't have to do that anymore. I learned serenity. Serenity is a practice. It isn't something just grant it to me and never take the grant. I love that serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity. He doesn't tell me what to do with it. He just grants it to me. Well, if he granted it to me once, I got it forever. But how often did I use it? To look at serenity as a practice. And the other things of life, peaceful, being peaceful. I had a great teacher, many good teachers in the AA program that taught me so much. Do you want to be at peace or do you want to be right? I spent a lot of time being right because it made me feel that people were listening to me, and if I was right enough, they wouldn't abandon me. And what happens when I was either being right or being at peace? When I was being right, I was making somebody else wrong. And that breaks relationships. So now I have to be more at peace and practice being at peace. I remember sharing that in Ferndale about 30 years ago. And there was a lawyer that I knew. She knows him, old Sam Stone. And he was in and out of the program, in and out of the program. And one night I was sharing about being at peace or being at right. And afterwards he grabbed me and said, oh, you've got to be right. You know, how that? I said, you're right, Sam. And he goes, but you don't understand. You got to be right. You're right, Sam. I just kept staying right in. You got to be. You're right, Sam. I'm at peace with whatever you want. No, it's not that. You know, he wanted to keep the fight going. And I think when it comes to me and hitting bottom, I couldn't do the fight anymore. And over the years, one of the big issues for me was making restitution to the Catholic Church. You know, this wonderful thing we have here talking about our character defects. What is it? It's a logo on there. My mind just went blank. What is it? What's the logo of this thing? Our resentments, yeah. See, you know, we can have resentments were easy for me to deal with it. Oh, I could make a resentment and resolve it and do all that. But it's grievances I couldn't give up. I mean, there's a big difference. I could build on grievances. Man, I had grievances against the Catholic Church that wouldn't quit. Molested and all kinds, beaten up and all this shit going on. And finally, it took me about 12 years on the program. I went to 3 different priests. 2 of them just wanted me to come back in the church. They didn't care what I had to say. Finally, an old one in Malibu, I shared what was my grievances and the pain around the church. And he gave me a blessing. And before I could say anything, he says, you know, Mike, if more people practice the principles of AA, they wouldn't need us priests anymore. And I felt a whole burden go away, but it took me 10 or 12 years to make that little bitty move. The moves are so simple for me, it's just my unwillingness to go there until it's so painful that I have to. Now, I realize this practice is a continuum. I'm learning still every day. I keep growing every day. I do service. I go out and help the other alcoholic. I still remember Chuck Chamberlain's talking to me about practice and about all the principles and practicing these principles in all our affairs. When I first got on the program, it was them against us. You know, it was us in AA, but those normies out there, they don't know what the hell they're dealing with and all that. No, they know how to deal. They just haven't found a program yet. They haven't had somebody just reach out and listen to them. I love this practice, the principles in all my affairs. In early AA, I used to work at the AA Central in downtown LA and take incoming calls. And first time, I think I was sober for a couple of years. I was a young kid, and a church called and wanted somebody to come out and speak about the AA program. And I said, gee, that sounds interesting. And then one of the guys said, well, you go do it. We got to put your name down there. I said, what do I say? Oh, hey, just go talk to him. You can do it. You know, what do I do? I've never done this before. So I drive out to Bell, California. It's a little Baptist church. Walk in, there's 35 or 40 women in there, all looking at me. Here I am, this drunk, recovered alcoholic, and they're all waiting for something because, see, they all had alcoholic brothers or fathers or kids or whatever. And this is when this is early 60s, so they were really driving us, asking all over to come and help. And so I was scared to death. I didn't know what to say. And I just said, God, just let me do it. And I started sharing my little story. And when I got done, I didn't remember anything I said. It's all because of the story. A man taught me, he was from West Africa, about rituals. He had 2 PhDs, one from Savanfu and one from Brandeis, and 3 master's degrees. And he came here to teach ritual. And he was sharing that when people share their wounds in ritual space, calling on the Spirit, they go out among the people through their hearts, and it comes back to us. And those wounds become more manageable. And over time, they get softer and softer and softer. My wounds have never left. There's who I am. I can say, yeah, I know I got wounded there and there and there, but they're not driving me anymore. But they're part of who I am, and if I share those, it might help somebody else. So anyway, I'm then in this classroom, and I leave, and I'm out in the parking lot, and this young lady comes running across, crying, yelling my name, throws her arms around me, and said, I want to thank you. I said, what did I do? She says, my mother died when I was 9 years old from alcoholism. And you're the first one that ever told me that it wasn't my fault. I carry that girl with me today because I can feel the loss in her, that I was lucky enough in this program to reach out to help another human being have a little peace in their life. But then later, I started doing more. I started practicing it with everybody. I was down in the VA hospital, and I've got heart problems, and I've had 7 angioplastics and 6 stents, and I have angina attacks and all that craziness, but it's all part of the journey. You see? Hey, my dream is to die talking in an AA meeting. Then you can all have fun and dance. You see, because I don't worry about that. But I was there getting an MRI, and it was narrow, and a gurney was coming down with this guy who was really agitated, and he was about 70. And his wife was there hovering over him, and there was nothing she could do. And he was angry at her and taking it out on her. And I had to wait to get my stuff out of the locker and wait for the gurney to get into the MRI room so I could walk out. And as I came up to her, I just reached out, put my hand on her shoulder and said, it's okay. This is his journey now. Trust. It's his journey. You don't have to worry about it anymore. It's all for him. Just relax. And she just sort of melted. I said, you're okay. And I walked out. That's what Chuck taught me about practicing these principles in all my affairs. Wasn't long, a couple years ago, I was at a Radio Shack, and the young man couldn't understand what I wanted, and he didn't know how, and he hadn't the experience, and I'm a little bit angry old fart, and I walked out. I couldn't get as far as from here to the door before I had to go back and clean that up. I don't have to live that way anymore, and I practice in all my affairs. To learn to love myself was the biggest one. I have a sign on my wall that says, forgiveness is giving up all hope for a better past. I can't live in the past. I can use the past, and I know where to go to. I know where to go to God, to the spiritualness of this program. I've studied a lot of different religions, Buddhism, all kinds, Quakers, Catholics, yeah. And what I learned out of that is that all paths to God are wonderful. People ask me, and I do the heart program now down in Humboldt County, and it's people who want to get their driver's license back, and they got to sit and listen to somebody from alcohol for an hour. Oh my God, come in on 10 o'clock on Tuesday or 2 o'clock on Wednesday or Sunday and deal with it. I got this captive audience. Oh, it's so much fun. If you ever get a chance to do it, go into a captive audience and they can't get away. I mean, it's great. And to see the different faces of anger and rage and people crying and all that. You get 30 of them in there, man. I mean, I've done about 300 of those things, an hour here, an hour there. Next month I do 3 of them. One in Miranda, one in Eureka, and one in Willow Creek. Some of there's 7 people, 8 people, but they're all there because they want their driver's license. They don't want to hear somebody from AA. They could care less. But the joy of spreading the news and showing them that this maybe is an opportunity for you guys to do the greatest thing you could do is go buy some flowers and give it to that cop and watch their reaction. And say, this is a wake-up call for you that what could happen in the future. This is a possible for you. And either what you do is fine, I love you anyway, but it's your journey. And share that. And doing it, I walk out of there on cloud 9. That I've reached out to people that don't even want to listen. But a lot of them do, because a few years later I hear somebody come up to me and say, Mike, I said, yeah. He says, I was in the heart program and I heard you and you made a difference in my life. I go to Pelican Bay right down the street here. I was talking to a bunch of young people and in one of the groups that I did, heart group, I said, there's a young man sitting in Pelican Bay. He's serving 50 years to life. At 16 years old in a blackout, he killed 3 people in liquor store robbery because of alcohol and drugs. And they squirm. But I said, that could have been me. I had everything going for me to go to that direction. If I hadn't gone in the Navy and something happened and I got a place where I didn't have to act out that stuff. But to go and do service work, to go and share with other people, to reach out in the supermarket, drives my wife crazy sometimes. They stand there, and the girl's looking like she's having a hard time. She's tired and all that. I said, hey, would you call the manager? She said, why? This lady's been following me all over for the last 15 minutes. And she made me drive her down here. I said, what? Yeah, God, I can't get rid of her. Would you take her? And all of a sudden, she catches it. We're having fun. You see, that's another practicing. We have fun in AA. We have fun with this disease. It's exciting. I wouldn't be anything else. I would no longer be a sober somebody without this program. I couldn't do that. I mean, this is a joy that I've been dealing with for all these years. All these years. This love in this room, the love in every meeting. I've never been to a bad meeting. It's just how I show up in it. It's not how life shows up in me, it's how I show up in life. I can choose at any moment to be peaceful. I helped a hospital down in Woodland Hills in the late 60s to start an AA meeting. And we went down, about 4 or 5 of us from Woodland Hills in Topanga. I lived in the canyon then. And we go down there at the meeting every Tuesday and help set it up and help get it going. And they had about 12 beds in there with alcoholics drying out and going through their little program. And one night, we usually go out for coffee afterwards and say how good we were and what we did and all that stuff, 4 AAs. We have to do those things. Anyway, so we picked a topic. I don't know why it came up, but feeling good came up. What does it take to feel good? I never thought about that. Feeling good. I don't ever remember feeling good. Just feeling good. Not feeling okay and knowing that, that in the head, and you can find something else to go to. We talked about it, and I got high on feeling good. Really high on it. I get home to Topanga, and my kids were asleep, my wife was asleep, it was 10:30 at night, moon was out. So I went down and sat in my goat pen, talking to the goats. They knew how to feel good. They just leaned against me and pushed me and listened, and I had a great time with the goats. Then I went to bed, I got in this morning, I was still feeling good. I said, this is wonderful. I'm driving down Coast Highway, and all the ladies in their bikinis are crossing the highway, and the sun's shining, and the ocean's blue, and it's beautiful, and I get to my office in downtown LA, and in 10 minutes I'm in an argument with somebody in our warehouse over nothing. Because I couldn't feel good. I couldn't maintain it. I had to start practicing every day to feel good. I had to take what one of my early sponsors said to me, and they weren't nice all the time. He was giving me something to do. I want you to do this. Well, I'll try. And he slams the book down, scared the hell out of me. What do you mean by trying? Trying is like lying. Either you do it or don't. There's no half measures in this program. Trying left me a little way out, a squeeze room, so I tried to, but it didn't work, Now, you're either going to do it or you don't, and if you don't come back. And get the hell out of the program because you're not doing it right. You got to want it to be there, and you got to want it more than you want to drink, and you got to willing to go to any lengths. So I was having some issues in Topanga about how I was dealing with some stuff, and it was really the fact it wasn't the stuff, it was the not learning to love myself. You see, I could learn to forgive and give to other people and all that stuff. But I started doing that little practice every night. And my sponsor said, do it for 30 days, whether you like it or not. And I looked in the mirror every night before I went to bed and said, I love you. And all that stuff in my head would come up, yeah, but you didn't do this right, and all that self-talk. That self-talk goes on 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It never lets up. It's got its own engine. You never have to give it any gas. It just goes. And I was there doing that. I did it, and I cried, and all that stuff. You didn't do this, you lied here, you cheated on your wife, whatever it was. It just went on and on. And finally, about halfway through the month, I said, I love you without reservation. I love all you, good, bad, or indifferent. And all of a sudden, that self-talk and that put-down and all that subsided slowly. And by the end of the 30 days, I could look in the mirror and smile and enjoy loving myself. Because if I can't love myself, how can anybody else love me? Because how I treat myself is how I train people around me. It's like that saying on my wall, attitudes are contagious, is yours worth catching? And when I got a shitty attitude, I get somebody to really take me on. And when I got a loving attitude, I find a lot of loving people there, and I wonder how I do that. It's how I show up in the relationship. And I could keep talking. And so those are the things that's taken years. Now, this December, I'll be 55 years sober in this program. And I'm still working on it. I'm still practicing this because I can't live on yesterday's practice. I can't live on yesterday's practice. So as I reach out to the one who still suffers, or the ones that are suffering and don't even know it, and I don't tell them, I just reach out to them, so they can find at least somebody cared, somebody said hello, and all those things. To watch this thing grow, I had a wonderful opportunity. See, I got sober at 21, and there was something missing because I was so young, and everybody was in their 40s and 50s, late 30s. They'd been through a lot of stuff. You know, yeah, I had my tough times drinking, but it was only for 4 years. And I was talking to a young man at Humboldt State University at the AA meeting there 3 years ago. And he'd just gotten back from Ontario at the Young People's Convention, California Young People. Yakipa. Oh, it was great. Anyway, he said, why don't you go to the Young People's meeting? You got sober when you were young. I never heard it, even really thought about it, because all I went to was what I was comfortable with. I went with a bunch of old people. And they said, you're too goddamn young to be here. Go out and drink some more. You haven't drank enough. You know, all that stuff. I spilled more than you had, all those stories. But I knew I had to stay there, so I listened and let it go. So I decided to go, and we had a meeting in Eureka. About 3 months later, I finally went to the meeting. I'm sitting there, there's about 25 young people. It's a couple of older people. It was an open meeting. And a young lady who was 18 said she came to her first meeting, and it was all a bunch of old people. They were 40. And I'm going, shit, I'm 73. I think it was 3 years. I'm 73. What the hell am I doing here? And then I realized that it was something that I missed in early AA, was companionship with my age group. And I could understand what she felt like. And it opened up a whole new dimension in my life. It opened up a whole new wonderment in AA. You know, these miracles are happening all the time. I'm just willing to listen. So I went to my first conference 2 years ago in Fresno, and I was the oldest one there. And I got to be up in front of 2,200 people to give books out to the young people with 10 days or under. And to watch their smiles and their love and their sharing was amazing. This disease is getting faster and faster and faster. It's hitting them quicker and quicker and quicker. It's unbelievable that the people now that I see that are coming in, like these two young people here, finding a way of life using the 12-step program. Finding this thing that the book was published 1 million times, it took them 30 years. And since 1970, they've published 40 million copies in 180 countries, in 90 to 100 languages. And out of that, all the 12-step programs of gambling and all the other stuff that goes with us is just making this grow and grow and grow. Millions and millions of people from 2 people dying over a disease that they couldn't cure. So I went to that, and it was just absolutely amazing. I felt so at home with the young people. And a lot of old timers didn't like what the young people do, because when a person's reading the 12 traditions, they would echo back to them little sayings like, we don't take outside contributions. Keep your dirty money, a young would say, a bunch of them would say, stuff like that. And they go, and the old timers go, you can't do it that way. They were doing it the way that they can be heard. They can do it the way that they can relate to. We have a different set of communication now than we did in 1944 and 45 and all that stuff. So then the following year, this year, I got to go to Reading. And I'm still the oldest in the group. And I got to give out the first books. But I'm sitting there, I'm looking out, and you know, there's certain relationships that we can never make work. We got to let them be what they be. And that's with my son. who's never taken a drink, but I haven't talked to him in 3 or 4 years. He lives in Reading. And his third wife had 4 daughters. And I knew her before she got married. I knew her son because the son's father was a friend of mine in AA. So I'm over there at this convention, and there's my granddaughter, step-granddaughter, and her boyfriend, now husband, both of them young in AA. And I got to acknowledge them, to see them there, and how important it is there can take and carry on where I leave off. To have a grandchild in the program. But to see 1,800 people there, all helping each other and reaching out and planning and doing things, young in AA, this program, this disease has gotten deeper and deeper and quicker. Because I know some young people that are 15 and 16 and got 2 and 3 years, 4 years sober. And when they say their stories and I hear them, I say, my God, I never had to do that. I never went through that stuff. I just went through my own pile of garbage and pain. And as long as those young people have a platform and keep growing, this program keeps growing. And there's no time limit. If you get a chance, go to a young people's meeting. Go there and listen to that wonderful energy of music going on until the speaker comes on. And it is theirs. And we can open our hearts, and I can, and be really part of that energy. I just can't dance as long as they can, and I can't stand up all night. And it was just wonderful. So out of those things, the next one's going to be in San Jose, and I'll probably go down and do that. Because, see, I was there when I was 21. And I got the way of loving them deeper and deeper. This program, to me, gives me more and more and more joy and appreciation for the willingness of everybody to be in this room. It's like Chuck used to say, I'm glad you're here. You didn't have to come here tonight. You could be in Nogales or New Mexico. You could be at a movie. You could be anything. But you chose to be in this room with people you don't even know and maybe never see again. A few years ago, I was up in Canby, Oregon. It's a wonderful little town. And I was having a little issues with my wife. They come about once in a while, and you feel a little grumpy, and you want to, find somebody else at fault and blame them and all that. And I decided to go to a meeting. And so I went down to Canby, and there were 7 people in the room. And we did our hour, and afterwards there was an older guy there, and I said, can I talk to you for a minute? And yeah. So we sat outside, leaning against the truck, and we talked for an hour. He listened to me. He just let me talk. And he said, it'll all work out. Just turn it over to God. I never saw him again. I've never been there again. But I've been to Ireland, Scotland, and many other places in languages that don't speak the same language, but the energy is the same. People reaching out and helping each other. It's absolutely amazing that this has grown so much, and it's so deep. And the mysticism for me gets deeper and deeper and deeper. The joy of watching the newcomers come in and reach out hand to them and watch them take it out and take on with it and make it move. Because it's what I put into it is what I get out of it. Everything is my choice. I can choose at any time to be grumpy or not. I can choose to blame somebody or honor what my participation is in it. I can forgive the people like my sister committing suicide and have her as a guide for me now. But when I wanted to berate her and say, you left 7 kids and all that stuff, who was it hurting? It was hurting me. I was being judgmental that she had a right to do what she needed with her own life. It's not my judgment of it. And I had to love her more and more to finally soften that place in my heart for her. And I have room for her today that I never had before. So I want to thank you all for being here. You're magnificent. I see magnificence in everybody in this room. I've never met a drunk I didn't like. because they're just there and they're another image of me. And I can relate to that. Thanks.